Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello and welcome to the latest episode. It's Friday the 17th of October 2025. I'm really glad that you are here. And I hope you enjoy the next 20 minutes or so of completely ad-free listening. No adverts, no subscribers, absolutely nothing. Just you and me having a catch up on the last few days. So let me kick off with the bad news. I did not get the Floret scholarship that I applied for, which is hugely disappointing. But there we go. That's the way it goes. They did send me a really lovely email, which I'm sure they send to everybody that applied to say you haven't got it. But it was written in a really, really nice way, which made it sound like they had genuinely read my application form. I'm sure they've read everybody's. But it was a lovely email, and they included a discount voucher as well for the course, which is very nice. It's still out of my price range, unfortunately, but I think that's a really nice gesture. So disappointing, but there we go. These things happen. The chickens have been enjoying some time in the flower area. I remember now why I don't let them in there when it's the production time, because they've just made like just the biggest mess you could possibly imagine. And I went in there this evening, and my entry path has just sort of completely been obliterated. I've got like little bits of wood that sort of create the edges to the pathway, and then there's bark that goes down the center, and they were just sort of scattered everywhere. And they've made a enormous multiple dust bath area right in the middle of the echinacea. They've kind of just scraped that to one side, even though there's like a huge area they could go in. They've just decided, yeah, the echinacea is the place they want to be. They've made a terrible mess in there. And the teenage boys, Lion and um, Molly, are being Molly's being very good. Lion's being really naughty. So he got separated, and he's in the flower area, and he's by himself in there, but there's a fence panel. He can see all the girls. They go up to the fence to talk to him and everything. So technically he's alone, but he's not alone because he's surrounded by other chickens. And I just felt a bit sorry for him. So I popped Chelsea in with him yesterday. And Chelsea's one of the older girls, but she's proper hardcore. It's quite difficult to find somebody that can spend their time with Lion, because he's a very young man and he just wants to do adult things all day. And the elder girls do not want to do that. But Chelsea is a bit of a hard nut. I think if she could carry like a flick knife, she probably would. She's just one of those birds that you just do not mess with. So I thought I'll pop Chelsea in there. And when I got up to the plot yesterday, I'd only been gone for a couple of hours. I got up to the plot and Chelsea was by herself, and Lion had just flown out. And I don't quite know how he got over a 6-foot fence panel, because he's a very heavy bird, but he managed it. So he was with all the other girls and Chelsea was by herself. So they'd obviously had a bit of a run around, because certain things were completely flattened in the flower garden. And as it's the end of the season, I don't really mind so much, although there were a couple of straw flowers that got demolished. But so I'm going to have to put some netting over his little area just to stop him flying out. Now, yesterday was the open day at my wholesaler. In fact, it was Wednesday as well. It was 2 days. So I called in on Wednesday and bought some woodies for next year. So I have bought some Hydrangea Limelight, some Cotinus or Cotinus, depending on how you say it, just one of those, and one lilac. They only had really expensive white lilacs, which I wasn't going to pay for. So I bought a really super cheap 10 quid lilac. And I'm quite hopeful. They grow pretty fast, those guys. So I'm hopeful that will be productive next year. That's because I love the smell of lilac, and I'm really into woody shrubs after the success of the hydrangeas. So I thought I would talk to you today about how fantastic hydrangea, particularly Hydrangea Limelight, is, because if this is a plant that you aren't growing at the moment, or even if you're after just an idea for your own garden, I really highly recommend them. And that's why I've just been out and bought a few more. I bought one last October in last October's plant sale at the wholesalers, actually. Didn't really know anything about them. I just thought that looks quite pretty. I'll buy one of those. And I never got round to planting it. So it has spent all of 2025 in the pot that it came from wholesalers with. Now, bearing in mind, hydrangeas, as the name suggests, like water. I thought it would be too difficult actually to get it in the ground this year because of all the droughts and heat waves that we had. So it spent the whole year sitting in a tray so I could keep it well watered, a really sort of low level tray. And it has been absolutely phenomenal, this one plant. And it actually made number 3 on my most profitable top 10 list, which I covered a few weeks ago. And that was after all the costs of production and labor and everything were taken into account. It was just an absolute trooper. I think I got 3 sort of flushes out of it, if you like. And it was just so successful that I ended up going and buying a couple more during the summer because the stem price was great and I could kind of pay for the plant in one season. So Limelight is actually a cultivar. The original one, the original Hydrangea paniculata, comes from China and Japan. And Limelight was bred in the Netherlands in 1990. And I just think it's such a cracking plant. So it's deciduous. It grows up to 2 meters high, and it's got this really nice cone of these sort of they're sterile florets that open lime green. Then it kind of goes into a sort of white color, and then they change color again into this sort of lovely dusky pink as the summer goes on, which is lovely. And you can also cut them and just dry them as well. So many uses for them and so many different shades that you can then sell them in. And I realized how amazing they were, not just from the financial point of view, but I didn't dare cut anything during the season because I thought I can't possibly, because if somebody then decides they want to buy them and I've just cut them and messed about with them, I'll feel really guilty. So I didn't use them at all until really, really late in summer. I think August, I sort of, my wedding florist had a break and I thought I'm just going to cut and do some bouquets with these, just practice. And they were so amazing. And I watched an Instagram video about somebody doing an arrangement with them. And they used the Limelight as the sort of the core of the bouquet, and then they fed all these other stems into it. So the hydrangea heads kind of formed this wonderful structure, which as soon as I started using it, I thought, oh, well, this is really clever. It's the same with sedums. So I've had a bit of a practice with some of my sedums that are up there. And again, you sort of put them in the center, you use them as the starting point, and then just feed everything else in. And they kind of fill the center out and stop all the flowers, merging into just one tight little bunch. And the plants themselves are incredibly low maintenance. One of the great things about this cultivar is that it's upright and it's very robust. The stems are nice and strong and it doesn't need staking. So particularly useful for me. It's very easy to prune. Once the whole season is finished, you just cut it down to this kind of base framework that I don't know how you start them off if you had little tiny ones, but the ones I've got from the wholesalers, they probably got about this sort of framework that's 3 inches maybe above the soil level. And you just literally cut everything down to that. And then it blooms on the current season's growth. So everything that grows next year, it will bloom on that. So there's no kind of messing about like you have to do with some of the other hydrangeas, which bloom on the previous season's growth. It's like once you get your head around it, it's fine. But I do have to stop and think. It's like raspberries. If you're not sure what you've got, it can be a bit tricky. So things like autumn bliss is it fruits and flowers on the current season's growth. So at the end of the year, you cut them down to the ground, and then everything you get the next year is going to fruit and flower for you, flower and fruit. So it's that kind of deal, which I think is really easy. The stem lengths that I got from my plants were great. I mean, at least 40 centimeters, if that's what the florists need. And repeat flowering, it just kept producing new growth and flowering on it. So the florist that I was working with this year, she absolutely loved it. She bought lots and lots from me, and having used it myself, I completely understand why. It's just lovely to work with. And again, I love it as the colors change as the season went on. So I guess if you have the money to buy established plants, then fantastic. If you price it right, you can probably pay for it in one season. Um, I kept mine very well watered this year. I kept my eye on it like a hawk. Um, I've got quite a few more now, so they are going to go out in the field. But I have been looking it up, and it seems that they are able to cope with periods of drought, assuming that they are well established. Now, in the first year, I wouldn't say that's well established. So I guess 2026, they're going to need I'm going to need to make sure that they are watered properly. But after that, they should be good to go. So yeah, that is why I'm a huge fan of it, and why I've just been and bought a few from the wholesaler. And I'm looking forward to working with them actually next year. So I've been making bouquets today actually, and I've signed up for one of Lenny Larkin's free courses that she's doing, and I can't remember what it's called now, but she's been sending me emails fairly regularly. And one of them yesterday was about what to do at the end of the season with stems that you've still got. And she suggests giving them away, making bouquets up and giving them away to people. Maybe like a florist that you've worked with this year, or a florist that you'd like to work with next year, or just people. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. So I'm going to make a few up today. So I was practicing, and I have to say, I kind of cheated. I did the arrangements in vases instead. So I've been collecting glass jars and vases for years, kind of into an anticipation of this moment, I think, because I am still finding it quite time consuming to do a decent hand tie. I can do them, but sometimes they just go a bit wrong. And I find with the dahlias, like, you just don't want to be over handling them, I guess, unless you're experienced, because they just don't really appreciate being manhandled. And every time the petal sort of brushes against another petal, I think, oh, I've bruised it, and I'm going to, have a problem with that. So I find it much easier to just make these arrangements in these vases. Now, they're not fancy vases. The ones I used today were actually jars that used to keep olives in. So my other half gets through a lot of olives, and he's been on a high state of alert for all jars for the last 2 years. So I have a selection of these sort of olive jars, and they're really lovely because they're kind of slightly bulbous, like the sides are curved, and they're very, very nice, and they're a reasonably nice height without being just too much. So I was doing that today, and I used up a whole load of mimosa foliage that I cut down the other day, which is really gorgeous to work with. It was so pretty, all fluffy and just really, really nice. So I made up some vases, and I dropped one of them off to my yoga teacher this afternoon. And she sent me a really lovely message when she found it, which is really nice. And I thought, this is one of the reasons why I need to be selling direct to customers, because I think I'm one of those people that responds extremely well to positive affirmations. Um, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it is a thing with me, and it has been, very satisfying to sell to my wedding and event florist. And many a time I've looked at the photo I've looked at her Instagram afterwards of the wedding and the event, and I've had a little cry because I've been so emotional to see my flowers in these incredible displays and situations and in country house hotels. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at that. Makes me very emotional. But it was a different kind of emotion to have a thank you message from somebody who was clearly touched by the flowers. And I thought, oh, I really like that feeling. I need to be selling more of these direct, and also so that I can better convey the whole ethos of how I'm growing and what I'm doing, which I think has a I don't know that we can quantify the value of it, but there is a story behind everything, and I would rather be able to connect with people and them know the story where the flowers have come from, I guess, and the way they've been grown and the level of care and attention that's gone in. And do you know what I mean? Rather than just literally handing it over to somebody who maybe the end client has has no idea, will never know the way they've been grown and nurtured and that they're organic. And so, yeah, I'm beginning to get my brain in gear for what a retail channel is going to look like next year. And that could just be because all of these new HRT drugs are finally kicking in, and I can feel a lot more positive about things. So it could be two scenarios. But anyway, that was what I was also doing today. Now, tomorrow, I am going to a peony sale. Now, there's a grower in Oxfordshire called Green and Gorgeous, and she has masses, and I do mean masses of peonies, and she's having like a flash sale tomorrow. She's dug all her peonies up. They've been in the field for 15 years, apparently, and she is removing them and selling them. And I'm going to pop up and get some. She's hopefully selling large clumps. I don't know whether she will have split them all down, but she's charging £1 an eye. So I'm hoping that there are some decent sized established clumps up there. So that is what I'm going to go off and do tomorrow. Now, I have, as you know, ordered a few peonies from J. Parker's. They will probably be quite small, and I don't know what the yield is going to be like next year. So when I saw this sale on Green and Gorgeous's Instagram, I thought, well, this might be worth a punt because these are very mature plants. And assuming they transplant okay, they should be in sort of maximum production next year. If I can get them planted, they're going to need to be quarantine planted somewhere because I don't want any other soil coming in. And no, what am I saying? No disrespect to Green and Gorgeous. Like, I'm thinking that they've got horrible diseases or weeds, but you just don't know. Like, it's one thing bringing stuff in like sterile compost from somewhere, but it's quite another having a whole load of soil dug out of someone else's field. So I need to find a little bit of a quarantine area for those guys to go in tomorrow, but probably worth having a little bit of a punt on that, and I'll see what I can come up with. The other thing that's happening this weekend is the construction of hopefully two, but maybe only one pallet tables. Very excited about this. So I will be issuing instructions to my other half about everything that he needs to bring in order to do that. And hopefully we'll get that done this weekend, although we are forecast to have quite a lot of rain on Sunday. So I'm not sure whether we'll have time. Well, we'll have to make time because I'm so excited about this pallet table. And the other thing is that the leaf mold composting is starting again with gusto, and it's going to start again differently this year. Last year, I made up 3 designated now leaf mold compost bays, as opposed to my normal compost, which is just like green and brown material. I wanted to have just leaf mold. And I made the mistake of putting them in the area where the chickens are, thinking, oh, they might have a bit of a ferret around, bit of a scratch, but it'll be fine. And I kept filling up the bays and filling up the bays. And then I think I just took my eye off the ball because there's not a scrap of leaf mold in any of the 3 pallet compost bays. Not a scratch. Like, there's no evidence that there were any leaves in there whatsoever. And I think they must have just been breaking down, and the chickens have just scratched them to bits, and they've just completely gone. So I filled one of them with a 1-ton bag of leaves today from a job I was on, and I have put a pallet on top of them so that Molly and little Mo cannot get in there and ruin all the leaves. Because this time next year, when we're speaking, I want to be able to tell you that I am spreading my homemade leaf mold onto the beds, and not in the position I am in this year where I have no leaf mold whatsoever. So it's going to be a busy weekend. There is a lot to get through, and bed number 4 also needs finishing as well. Things need cutting back. Yeah, there's absolutely loads to do at this time of year, and let's hope that we have a nice dry day tomorrow and that I can crack on with all of that. So I'll be back on Tuesday. I'll keep you posted, especially with what happened with the peonies. And I think that's everything I have to tell you today. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are and wherever you're listening, and that you will come back and join me next week for the next episode. All right, take care. All the best.